So my wife and I have actually been talking about spending a couple months backpacking through Central Asia, and it's going to be a very different type of travel experience. There's not a lot of infrastructure, there's not a lot of roads, I mean, certainly not, a lot of things like that. And so for us, it's going to be very much a challenge, trying to figure out how we're going to find our way around, where we're going to sleep, what we're going to do.
Sure.
There's a lot of these things that we just don't know. And we recently were in Ukraine, which is much more developed than Central Asia, but has its limitations in certain areas. And we actually decided to do a trial run to see if we could sort of stomach the idea of going in blind and not really knowing what's going to happen at any given day. And one day of our trip, we were in Crimea, taking the train down from Simferopol to Sevastopol and hanging out, and got off halfway along the way, headed into town, and there's a great little town there worth visiting. It's actually got some great hiking and some cute little things, an old mosque that's 500 years old, and there's history to it, but it's generally bypassed on the tourist trail. People come in as a day trip from one end or the other, but very few people stay there.
Okay.
We went in blind. We knew that this hikes were there, and we would figure those out eventually, but no hotel booked. We didn't know what the restaurant scene was like. We had nothing.
Really by the seat of your pants.
Completely by the seat of our pants. We had our bags on our back, and the good news is we knew that an hour each way there was something. So we sort of had a contingency plan, but it was a very interesting experience sort of trying to figure out, can we do this? Can we do this absolutely crazy?
Right.
We've got nothing planned.
Yeah.
Let's see, do we kill each other?
Right.
Do we actually enjoy it? Can we find a place to sleep? Does it cost us 3 times as much as booking the Best Western that we thought we were going to stay in as our backup plan?
Right.
And, the good news is, at the end of the day, we actually found a place. We walked in, and there's a little tourist bureau in town. We didn't know that. Turns out that was very helpful. There was a woman there who spoke some broken English. I could say 1, 2, and 3 in Russian, and and my wife actually speaks a little bit of Russian now. So between the 3 of us, we managed to have a conversation, explain that we needed somewhere to sleep. We didn't want to spend a lot of money. We wanted to be relatively close to the center of town.
Okay.
And about 5 minutes later, she tells us to hold, takes out her iPhone naturally, because they're everywhere. That part of infrastructure seems to be working.
Yeah.
Makes a call, takes us outside, and then actually walked with us to the hotel up the street, walked us in, made the introduction to the hoteliers who spoke less English than she did, and said to us, made sure we saw the room, says, this is the room you're going to get, are you okay with it? That sort of level of service. Since we said yes, she said, thank you. She went back her way, back to, assumed to help the next stupid American tourist who showed up. And, we ended up actually spending about 24 hours in town and just had this great experience. That afternoon we went out hiking up into the cliffs around town.
Yeah, what did you see?
Yeah, there's, just the local sort of direct hiking and sort of nature sites around there. There are actually trails marked. I think the American government, through foreign aid development, has paid for the tourist bureau to operate. The Czech government paid for the hiking trails to be marked. So it's a very international flavor going on there in Crimea. So there were trails marked. We hiked around for a couple hours. There were mountain goats up in the hills that, I'm sure if we got too much closer, probably would have come after us, and I would imagine would have won that battle. The part we were hiking on, these rocks and cliffs and stuff, was particularly worrisome when we saw the animals. But we saw that the next morning. We actually walked out a little to take a bus a little further out of town, and there's a old monastery in a cave that's a couple hundred or built into the cliffs, carved out of these cliffs, cave style, that's a couple hundred years old, still active. You can actually, if you want to make pilgrimage there, you can and stay there, which I guess would have been another option for somewhere we could have slept. Not so much with making pilgrimage these days, but from there you keep walking, and there is actually a 13th century-ish settlement, remains of one anyways, up on basically atop a bluff, and it was this old walled city where they could defend themselves easily. And so, the valley was very useful for trade and for growing, crops and such. But every time as they would get attacked, the city would sort of retract back into this cliff top space. It was a walled city. It was well defended, and it was above everybody. So they could, as you're trying to attack them, you'd have to go up, and they could basically, throw balls of tar or whatever they did back down on you, and they could defend themselves. And it really just, you got that great sort of sense of history walking around in these places. And then, back down to the train station, and another hour on, and we were back in, sort of developed city world again.
That sounds like a fantastic trip.
It was a great time. Highly recommend it.